Welcome to Sassy and Single. I'm your host, Natalie Sady, and joining me today is Silvy Khoucasian. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Khoucasian, yeah.
Khoucasian.
Close enough, yeah.
Associate Psychotherapist.
Yes.
To talk about all the things that we do when we are dating.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Let's dive right in and start with, when you're seeing clients, what is one of the biggest sort of habits that you see coming through when people are trying to date?
What are some of the biggest habits? Mainly like
good or
struggles,
bad.
or good or bad?
Good or bad.
Well, you know, so much of the work that I do has to do with how we've been imprinted to feel trust with somebody, to feel like we can actually show our true selves. So it's really dissecting what the person's framework is coming in, what the lens is that they see, you know, somebody that they want to be intimate with. So there's people that I work with that have a much easier time being able to be vulnerable, being able to really balance the connection between sharing about themselves, asking about the other person. And then there's people that are either more avoidant or more anxious. People that are more avoidant, they really struggle to be vulnerable. They actually tend to see a lot of flaws in people that they're dating. So instead of, you know, owning that there's insecurities in themselves, they tend to project all that outwards. Whereas people that are very anxious can tend to they fall in love really quickly. So they're so, you know, yearning to create that connection because that's what was missing for them growing up, that they tend to miss a lot of red flags. There can be, you know, somebody that may not be investing in them the same way, but they'll bypass that because they just want to have that connection.
It's funny you bring that up. One of my observations, because being single and being somebody that I don't fall in love easily, I don't pick people apart, but I think I'm very aware as to whether we're connecting or not. But one of the things that does make me question myself is when I see other women that have been engaged 6 or 7 times, and I sit there and think, how are you finding that many people that you're agreeing to marry them? They may not have made it down the aisle, but I don't understand how people can form connections that quickly. Is it something about they have an easier time finding that connection, or is it generally that they are just searching for a connection and it doesn't matter who that connection is with?
It's such an important question, and it's so polarized, right? Like you said, there's people that tend to just are able to connect so much more quickly and find those longer term relationships. And there's people, and I relate to you. I would think I went on 300 dates before I met my current partner. And I was like, what is happening? What's wrong? Why am I not connecting? And and it wasn't until I was really able to dissect some of my own avoidant tendencies, which, you know, every time I'd go on a date, I was like, nope, you know, I'm picking apart every person that I would be on a date because I would not be able to connect. Whereas people that are more, you know, they come from a little bit more of a healthier background, or, you know, even our past relationships, they affect us. You know, if we've had trauma, if we've had any kind of unhealthy dynamic with someone that hasn't been processed or integrated, guess what? That gets carried over into the next experience.
Absolutely.
It doesn't go anywhere. It gets put in a box until we start to feel vulnerable with someone else. So what you're describing makes so much sense, and I see it all the time, and including in myself.
Do you think, though, because I understand the whole thing about avoidance, and it's very rare for me to feel that connection with somebody and start to let my guard down, but do you actually think it's healthy to connect with so many people that you keep getting engaged over and over again?
Well, I think that there are two sides of the extreme of so when we're too avoidant, we're not opening ourselves up to connection at all, right? So we're on this side and we're not getting the relationship. And the other side of that is we are perhaps not being objective enough, or we're not actually looking into or taking the time in between these engagements to assess, okay, let me reflect on this. What was it about this experience that didn't work for me? What was it about myself that I wasn't actually expressing? And really taking that time to reflect before we just put ourselves back in the dating experience. And so common that, you know, a lot of us, we neglect that integration middle piece. You know, we just jump into the next thing to numb out the grieving stage.
I completely agree. So many of my girlfriends jump from relationship to relationship. Some of them have set up their next relationship before they leave the first one so that they feel that they have somebody there. I'm the polar opposite of that, and I take very long breaks in between, and sometimes I sit there and go, okay, this is nuts, but that's okay. So if we're dating and we're looking for somebody, how do you feel dating apps, online, all of that has affected the way we date?
Oh, I think it's affected us so much. I mean, if we go back in time where we used to date someone in a community and maybe we had a few options of potential partners, now we have an abundant amount of options. So what I think is the biggest struggle with dating apps is that, let's say we do make a connection with someone that we met on a dating app, and we start to have a struggle with them, or shit starts to come up, stuff starts to, come up for us. The part of the brain that is so, we become very entitled. We think, okay, I don't have to deal with this discomfort. I don't have to, to tolerate this. I could just go on and find somebody else that I don't have to deal with this. So it becomes like this narcissistic pattern of just avoiding ourselves. But it's also, knowing yourself. Some people can do dating apps and they're able to be very discerning and quickly recognize, okay, I met someone on an app, I'm going to give this a real chance. Whereas other people can really use that in an addictive way to just avoid ever having to do the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I speak to some of my friends, and I actually haven't been on a dating app before, but I speak to some of my friends, and it just seems that there are a lot of men that will say everything that they need to say to get what they want from the woman that they're dating. But as soon as they've slept together or they've had a couple of dates, they then move on. And last night I was told about a woman that was on a date with a guy. They'd been on several dates. She caught him on Bumble, scrolling through, finding somebody else he wanted to date while they were out.
Yeah, terrible. So terrible.
Do you think, though, that it has allowed people to just go, I don't need to commit because there are so many people out there?
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to that. It's a culture that, one of the things we have to always keep in mind is the cultural narrative that we're experiencing. So there's a couple themes that I like to utilize in my work is to challenge those things, because if you look at other cultures, they're experiencing a completely different lens of doing this. So within dating, just dating alone, if we have so much abundant of choice, it actually creates a part of our brain, and it becomes like this, again, it feeds that addictive part of our brain, just like anything else. That how many of us buy things that we don't need? How many of us have things and just keep on consuming? But again, it is knowing your intention, and I think setting clear agreements with yourself before you put yourself out into the dating world. Okay, what are my must-haves? What is something that is essential for me in a partner? And the thing about having boundaries and standards, it does turn off a lot of people, but it doesn't turn off the right people.
Well, this is right. I mean, you need to be in the same place with somebody in order to take it to the next level.
Absolutely.
So what are some dating habits that we should sort of have when we're going out and doing this, other than being clear with ourselves about what it is that we want and we need? What habits should we be doing when we're going out, when we're meeting these people, when we're sort of making our decisions about whether they're, someone we want to keep seeing?
That we want to invest in emotionally, absolutely. So let's get practical a little bit with this. I love that. So there's a couple different things to look for. Number one, asking questions that really help us get to know the heart of the person. And obviously there's always that first date nerves, the jitters. You're not gonna go right into, so tell me about your childhood wounds, tell me about your deepest, darkest secret. That's not realistic, nor is it actually healthy. But we do want to pretty fairly early on, second date, third date, start to share something vulnerable about ourselves. But also, and this is one of the narratives that I help my clients challenge is, transparency is something that is promoted heavily right now in our culture and our social media. Be transparent at all costs and just be honest. And that's not always helpful. It's not honesty without the mutuality and the balance is not conducive to a connection. It becomes, again, another narcissistic expression of self, but really, is this person sharing something vulnerable back with me?
Yes.
I shared something, maybe I saw a movie and it touched me, and it reminded me of this time when I experienced pain growing up. Is this person then sharing something vulnerable back? Are their body language present with me as I'm sharing? Are they connecting with me? Are they, somebody that's a little bit more avoidant and has not worked on it is just going to be looking around, they're going to get really uncomfortable with vulnerability. Making space between dates. I like to say once a week in the beginning to give yourself enough time to really digest the date. Our hormones are going to be going crazy in the first few months. Our happy chemicals are going crazy because they're not seeing the objective red flags. They can't see those things. So in between the dates, see if you can get practical. Do I admire this person? Do I respect this person? Are they sharing things about their ex-partners in a respectful way? Even if they broke up and it was unhealthy, are they bashing this person? How do they talk about their family? We can say things that are very honest without having to bash someone, And those are things that intuitively I could feel on a date when it would happen, but I didn't know why I was so turned off. And it wasn't until I started to really, again, make space to be practical and to be more objective that I could start to say, okay, this is why. But also on the flip side, right? Now I was giving you the red flags on the other person, right? What are the things that we do that sabotage connection from happening? Do we share something vulnerable if somebody shares? Do we tend to focus on somebody's flaws as a way to kind of keep distance? Or are we trying for it to become too much too quickly? And what is that about? Can we just observe that? Can we bring some awareness to that so we can just call ourselves out? I'm like, okay, I'm doing that thing. Let me see if I can just breathe into this, call my friend, let some of that anxiety out, and really honor the slower pace to see if I can allow a connection to happen more naturally. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about red flags and things that we ignore. I get that no relationship, getting tongue-tied, is perfect and we all face our challenges. But I have a theory, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that in the beginning, in those early stages, it should be easy. It should be a reasonably natural flow, and it should be happy and all the wonderful things. And I've had people say to me that they've met someone and they really like them, but it's challenging. It's challenging for so many reasons, and they keep talking about how they want to help them through it, or they want to sort of figure it out. And they're talking about sometimes therapy, sort of when they're 3 or 4 dates in. And to me, I think relationships, the longer they go on, are challenging, and we do need to face things together. But we're meant to have a honeymoon period, because that's as good as it gets in a sense, where there's no pressure and there's no anything. Do you think that early on there should be challenges when you're dating someone?
Oh man, well, I could tell you from real life experience that when I met my own partner, I was probably the most traumatized that I've ever been.
Okay.
So I have trauma in my family. My great grandparents were genocide survivors, and trauma has been passed down in our family system. And so when we met, he was the perfect mirror for all of that to come up.
Right.
So even within the first few months, without anything that he's doing in particular, everything came up. And we started actually doing therapy and coaching within a few months in the relationship.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how much doing that and working on that foundation early on helped us.
Okay.
So I think it's a very unique choice. And I think it's also because we tend to view mental health a little bit, there's still a lot of stigma around it. And I think that if stuff comes up, it's so important to look at what that is.
Of course.
And what the relationship brings up. So it's not necessarily about making it about the other person, but if there's depression or if there's anxiety, all of that's going to come forward.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
But I'm not just talking about mental health. I'm talking about, it's just a difficult relationship. So I can only talk about things from my perspective or things that girlfriends have told me. But I dated somebody I had come out of a relationship and he was one of the loves of my life, but it was toxic. And we broke up and that was fine. And I knew that I wanted to date somebody who was the complete opposite of who he was. Because I wanted somebody that was going to be open and communicative and all of the things that this other person wasn't. And I ended up in a relationship with someone who was so overly emotional. It was actually a little too much for me. But the battle for me with that relationship came in that he was moving at such a speed. And I was saying, I really care about you, but I'm not there yet. And 3 months in, he wanted us to be where we would have been at 12 months or 2 years. And I kept saying, I need you to slow down and I need you to hear what I'm saying. And he kept telling me that I was just afraid. And I said, no, I'm telling you what I'm feeling. I'm telling you what I'm thinking. So I'm talking about battles like that. And it got to a point where it was just too much pressure and I was done. And it had nothing.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
So I'm talking about battles like that. I mean, I get
it's
that.
Almost like I'm hearing like you weren't feeling validated even for what you were experiencing and it was overridden by his stuff.
Yes.
You know, which this is where boundaries is so important. You were trying to set a boundary,
Yes.
a healthy boundary to articulate, I'm not there yet. Hey, can we just, slow the pace down? And, one of the challenges for people that are, unless they have done work and they have that awareness, it's really hard for someone to not take that as a rejection. Right?
Yeah.
But does that mean that we still don't get to kind of have a boundary? Absolutely not. So I think, and that's one of the things, when I work with couples, there's always one partner that's more ahead of the feeling game. It's very rare that I work with someone that's like, we fell in love at the exact same moment and it was, he said, I love you, and she said, I love you right after. That's very rare. So I think what you're describing is a very common dilemma for people. And sharing like what you said, I totally, I appreciate where you are. I'm not, there yet. Can we please slow it down? Had you felt heard and you know what? I totally get that I may be overwhelming you right now. I totally get that I'm a little bit at a faster speed, but let me just breathe. Let me just, I'm still here with you and I see that you're still committed to this relationship, but it's important for you to know that I hear you.
Yeah.
That could have played out so differently for you.
Look, I don't think he and I would have ever ended up together, despite his beliefs. But I think, because the other issue that we faced was he would argue with me, then he would hear me, or he would tell me he heard me. We would have one day together where he would back off. I would completely relax, enjoy what was going on, and then he would take it up 5 notches again. And I would sit there and go, okay. So for me, it's things like that. It's those battles that I'm talking about, I think more so than mental health. But
so what you're talking about is, I think, the attachment styles. And this is, again, the big part of my work is the way we tend to bond with our primary, and this is going to be a little bit scientific and nerdy, but it's a really helpful framework for people to know the lens in which how we feel when we start to depend on someone, how we feel when we start to bond with someone. People that are more securely attached or that have had really secure functioning relationships as children can flow with this stuff more naturally. They won't take certain things as personally. People that are more anxiously attached, as soon as they feel a disconnection from the partner, they want to cling. And they want to hold on. And sometimes as they hold on, it can really push someone away because they're not seeing that they're overwhelming the other person. Whereas, somebody that's more avoidant will do everything they can to push. And this is a spectrum, we can have 50% secure relating, but there's parts of us that are avoidant or parts of us that are anxious. And I think the key is really noticing where are the areas that I tend to be too focused on myself and not enough about the relationship. So if I'm so focused on getting my own need met that I'm not present for Natalie, I don't have a relationship. I don't have an audience anymore, or if I'm so anxious that I'm wanting to make something happen so fast and I'm not bringing any awareness to that, I could suffocate my partner. So having awareness about the attachment styles is so helpful because you can see what you're doing. And you have empathy. Hopefully, you're bringing empathy and compassion to yourself. this is, of course I'm doing this thing because this is what I grew up with, or these are the kind of relationships I may have had in my past that really traumatized me. And now that I'm getting close to someone, it's coming up again. So it always comes up. Our attachment bonding comes up anytime we go from that honeymoon phase that you described to the more committed and dependent stage, where all this stuff comes up that we can't hide from.
No, you absolutely can't, because then the veil comes down, your best behavior is gone, and this is the real me.
Yes.
I think my interpretation of sort of dating is a lot of these issues come in because it's man versus woman, and we think very differently. Do you think that it's easier if it's a same-sex couple trying to navigate this because they're able to understand the way the other one, the way their brain works or the way they communicate?
Well, absolutely amen to what you're saying about men and women thinking differently. It is fundamentally differently the way we process. So by scientific research, we know that the number one most important thing for women is connection. The number one most important thing for men is status. And by status, I mean him feeling secure and confident in his, whatever, if it's mission or work, that in his ability to provide. Whereas for a woman, if we go back in time, just tending to the community, making sure that the kids are taken care of, making sure that her partner's taken care of. So I would say that with a man to man and woman to woman, they can understand that core need more easily because they experience it in their bodies. And of course, I'm sure they have their own challenges, of course.
Absolutely.
And every relationship, whether man or woman, there's always a partner that tends to carry, at least from my work with clients, there tends to be one partner that exudes more of the masculine qualities and more of the feminine qualities. And that is what we love about our partner, but it's also what is the most challenging about our partner.
Of course.
So if I'm, and I tend to be the more emotional one, if I'm the more emotional one and I'm attracted to somebody that is more logical based, I'm gonna want him to be more emotional sometimes, even though I'm more, it's healthier for me to be with somebody that's more logical.
Yes, because it brings you back a little bit. We balance each other out.
Whereas another woman that's in a relationship with a woman or man to man, they're drawn to what feels like their natural counterpart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to have a few more conversations later on down the line. But with everything we've just talked about, and for people that are trying to navigate the dating world, especially here in LA, is there a particular dating tip that you can offer people, whether it be across the board or one for a man and one for a woman?
One for a man and one for a woman. One tip, right?
Yes.
I would say really try to understand what your boundaries are and learn to own them in a way that can also be kind. So, hey, you know what? If it's an early dating phase and the person wants to kiss you or wants to become more intimate than you're ready for, being able to say, I'm so attracted to you. I really feel such a deep connection. I'm just not ready yet. Being able to, because sometimes when we hold boundaries, we can come off really mean and harsh, especially when we're not practiced in setting boundaries. We have all this energy that's like built up and just like, blah, don't violate me, But when we actually start practicing for a while, we can actually, let me get clear on what the boundary is first within myself so that I can own it and express it in a loving way. And then observe, how does this person respond to the boundary? That will give you a lot of information on their ability to respect you. And even if they struggle, you know what, I feel rejected, I'm having a hard time, but I get that this is a boundary for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything comes down to respect.
Absolutely.
Can't move forward without it.
Yeah.
Silvy, thank you so much for making time to speak with me. We have your Instagram handle down the bottom so people can follow you there.
Beautiful.
Until next time, Sassy and Single.